Today I'm going to talk about this paper, Evaluating and Characterizing Human Rationales. In explainable NLP, we want to know why this model makes this prediction. So one way to do that is to figure out the rationale of this classification. What is a rationale? A rationale is a subset of input tokens that are considered the most important to the model's decision. So if there are 10 words in a sentence and the model decides that the first 5 words are more important than the remaining words in making its prediction. For example, in deciding whether this sentence is positive or negative, then these first 5 words are considered the rationale. Usually, people used sufficiency and comprehensiveness to evaluate the quality of the rationale. But in this paper, the authors try to evaluate the human-generated rationales using the automatic matrix. In addition, they draw the fidelity curve, which I'll explain later. And with those analyses, they found that the human rationales do not necessarily have high sufficiency or comprehensiveness based on the automatic metrics. Also, their fidelity varies greatly from model to model and from class to class. So what is the sufficiency and comprehensiveness? The sufficiency of a rationale is computed based on this intuition. So if the rationale is sufficient, then there shouldn't be too much difference when you classify only on the rationale versus classifying on the full text. So they took the difference between the full information classification and the rationale only classification, and they clamped this value to between 0 and 1. And they and then they scale that from 1 to 0, which means if the sufficiency value is higher, then the difference between this probability is less, and the higher the sufficient, it means that the rationale is more sufficient to make this classification. The comprehensiveness score is based on this intuition. So if an explanation is comprehensive, then the model's prediction on its complement should differ greatly from its prediction on the full information. And they scaled the sufficiency and comprehensiveness scores using some sort of null difference, and equations 3 to 5 depict their final normalized sufficiency and comprehensiveness scores. The results suggest that sufficiency and comprehensiveness metrics are highly model dependent and should not be compared across models without care. For fidelity curves, they set up the fidelity curves as figure 7. So the y-axis are the sufficiency and comprehensiveness scores, and the x-axis are the occlusion proportion, which is they take out the words of the sentences and see how much their sufficiency and comprehensiveness drops. They found that the fidelity curve varies from model to model and from class to class. So the idea to evaluate the human rationales using the automatic metric is a novel idea. What we can learn from this paper is that we still need to be very careful when designing the evaluation metrics towards the rationales. and probably the human rationales are gold standard. Probably the models are making the predictions in a way that is different from what we as humans can understand. These are left to future works.